Hey, my name is Pepper Pratt, and I have been a licensed therapist for over 30 years now. And I've been a husband for even longer than that, almost 39 years, as I'm counting the time this year. And I've been a dude for even longer than that. Now, I'm not a perfect therapist, I'm not a perfect husband, and certainly not a perfect dude. But I've literally spent thousands of hours with couples and with guys. And here are some things that I have learned that guys just need to know. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. I really just kind of want to give you a quick, like 7 habits of highly effective husbands kind of talk today that may be the best, 30 or 40 minutes that you ever spend. Because what I want to talk to you about is the things that actually work in marriage, and also kind of the place where I see a lot of guys just getting stuck. So this is kind of a field manual for men who are tired of missing it and just not really understanding why. All right. So I want to kind of say the quiet part out loud first. Okay. Men don't fail in marriage because they're bad guys. Okay. So many of the guys that I meet are really trying hard, and they're not, trying hard to just have peace or even to just have more sex in their marriage, but they really do want closeness and connection, and they really want to be pleasing to their wives. And many guys fail because they don't really know what to do, okay? And sometimes they don't know what they don't know. And they've not been trained in how to do the work of long-term healthy relationships. And what I find a lot of guys doing is just going with their instincts. And when their instincts aren't working, they just double down on their instinct. And their instinct, sometimes under relational pressure, is just really not their friend. Instinct is something that kind of makes you defend. It makes you fix. It makes you explain and correct and minimize and shut things down. So instinct is not always the best thing unless your instinct has been trained, right? So then you wind up being confused as to why the gap just keeps widening, okay? So this is not about trying harder, okay? This is about learning a few essential hacks, and that frankly, most men should have learned a long time ago, and it took me a long time to learn too. And by hacks, I don't mean like manipulation. I don't mean shortcuts or some kind of cold mechanical formula. Okay. I mean like learning a combination to a safe. You don't just kind of turn the dial this way and then a little bit that way and then just expect it to open. Okay. No, you have to have some precise numbers. But once you know the numbers, the dial works. Okay. So this is kind of fieldcraft for marriage. Now, if you want more, check out the fieldcraft training that you see below in the notes. Okay, and there's a whole 5-part series on this. But this one's shorter. This is just for you guys today. Okay, so here's the deal. Okay, guys become craftsmen in some of the hard skills. Okay, we learn how to field strip a pistol. We learn how to replace a garbage disposal. We learn how to flip a house in some cases, and for some of us, we learn how to do math. Right. But somehow our culture just expects us to pick up on the soft skills that are required to connect to our wives. Now, some of us figure it out. Some of you figure it out more easily than others, but most don't, and many are just kind of left guessing. So here are 7 hacks, and there are more, but this is kind of what gets the door open. And I would say steadiness and consistency with gentleness and humility kind of become the key over time. So let's kind of walk through it, all right? First, all right, let's get a fluid stance in communication. This is the first habit of highly effective husbands. Get a fluid stance in communication. Now, this means you're not in a defensive stance, okay? You're not in a reactive stance. You're not locked and loaded, ready for bear, okay? You're not in a shut down stance or kind of a running for the hills stance. I mean, most men are entering into hard conversations like it's some kind of courtroom or like you're going in for a fight. You're either preparing your case or you're bracing for impact. That stance alone escalates everything. When you walk into a conversation with somebody and they're already loaded for bear, then you kind of know you're in for trouble immediately. So don't be surprised when it escalates. But when you're in a fluid stance, okay, what a fluid stance says is I'm ready enough to stay here, but I'm also willing to listen and to understand. Stephen Covey, he's the one that wrote the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, okay, great book. So the title of this is kind of a spinoff from that. But understand, then be understood is one of the things, one of the first principles of a highly effective person. Understand, then be understood. You can't do this if you're thinking about what you're going to say next. You can't do this if you're the one that's trying to re-up. You can't do this if you're trying to one-up somebody or just trying to win the conversation. And you can't listen if you're just trying to find the bad guy. A lot of times we go into these conversations just wondering if I'm going to be, framed in some kind of way as being the one that's at fault or, being the bad guy. So we start making our case for that. But if that's what we're doing, we're not listening. We can't hear anything. Now, here's something to just kind of keep in mind. You don't need to win. You don't need to prove your point. You don't need to correct the record in real time. This is not a competition, right? So you just need to hold the space. You need to have a willingness to understand what it's like to kind of crawl down her throat and walk around in her skin and look out through her eyes and let her know that her perspective is believable, even if yours is different. And see, a lot of times, the moment we start seeing the difference in perspective, we want to start trying to correct her, right? Big mistake. So holding precious space means that we love her well. And we kind of set aside all of those counterpoints that are forming in our mind until we've really heard her, just for the sake of getting her, just for the sake of listening to her. And what happens is when we get defensive, that's just us broadcasting our weakness, right? It takes a lot of strength to just regulate and to hold space and listen to what she's got to say until we've really, really heard her. Okay. All right. The second habit of highly effective husbands is to move toward emotion instead of running from it. Now, this is where we as guys kind of get dumb. Okay. And it's not malicious. We're just kind of misinformed. All right. So we assume that emotion, when it comes up, is bad. We hear an emotion or something that like it's headed toward an emotion. And the first thing that we say to ourselves is, this must be bad. Okay. Now, that actually is the problem. Okay. And the thing that we've got to figure out is that emotion is not to just be shut down so that things can get reasonable again. Okay. That's where we get wrong. All right. So emotion often, not always, is something that's actually neutral. It's information. Right. We say things to ourselves like, well, I'm not emotional. Right. Wrong again. We are all emotional. And then we say things like, well, I don't make decisions based on emotion. Wrong again. We all make decisions based on emotion. The thing is you're either aware of those emotions or you're flying blind to those emotions. Either way, your operating system is being impacted by the emotions. And what a lot of guys do is we try to, tell ourselves and soothe ourselves by saying we're not emotional people and we don't operate by emotions, but we're really just kind of suppressing them and pushing them down, but they're still driving the bus. Okay. Now I'll talk more about this in Fieldcraft with emotional athleticism. So check that out in the notes below. So in the meantime, if you see emotions as neither bad nor good, okay, but important information and important data sources, not determining information, but important information, then you can begin to tune your heart into your own emotions and then even your partner's. See, the thing that's true is that if I can't name my own emotions, it's always going to be hard for me to handle the emotions of somebody else, and especially my wife. And then when that happens, you're going to appear threatened and you're going to appear insecure and you're going to appear weak. All right. So your job is not to fix it. I mean, you mean well. I mean, when you're trying to fix her, and here's the way it works. I mean, she starts talking about emotion and you start loading up. Okay. And she's talking and you're loading up and you're loading up a little bit more. But then it's one of those things where as soon as she takes a breath, you're like, well, if you just do this, you do this, you do this, and you do this, problem solved, and you're really proud of yourself. And then she just goes, I can't believe it. You're not even listening to me, right? And the thing is, we mean well, all right? We don't want our person to suffer, okay? And the thing that we don't realize is that it hurts more than it's helped when we start offering these fixes and these solutions and these opinions when it's uninvited. Now here's something brilliant, and I want you to lock this down, write it down. If somebody wants to know your opinion, they'll ask. Okay. If they want to know your opinion, they'll ask. And the opposite's also true. If they're not asking for your opinion, then guess what? They're not looking for it, okay? So your job is not to dismiss it. It's not to minimize it. It's not to fix it. It's not to tell her, why she's wrong for having those feelings. This is always going to backfire, okay? So let me just say that again, because this is where a lot of guys miss it. Don't fix it. Don't dismiss it. Don't try to talk her out of it. Your job when emotion comes up is to provide safety. Now, here's the part that messes with you, okay? You may not feel like you're doing anything, all right? But if you're present and if you're regulated and if you're not running, then you're doing really kind of the most important thing, all right? Number 3, practice regulated vulnerability. I just used both of those words a moment ago. So the third habit of a highly effective husband is to practice regulated vulnerability. Now, there are 3 phrases that every man should kind of have locked and loaded, and they are gold, okay? And 2 of them are for you, and one of them is kind of what you're going for with her, okay? So the first one is this, is tell me more. 3 words in this phrase, tell me more. So, she says something like, hey, I've been really feeling distant from you lately. Tell me more, okay? So I know there's every part of you that's like, uh-oh, there's that uh-oh that comes up and I need to shut this down. I need to run from this, or, tell her all the reasons why I've got as excuses that she must feel distant. No, tell me more. Wow, you feel distant from me lately. Tell me more. Okay. All right. You ready for the second one? The second one is this. Okay. That makes sense. Tell me more. That makes sense. So she tells you more, okay? And she's saying, you've been working a lot, and I appreciate that, but we've just missed each other, and it would be great to maybe block off some time together soon, so that we can feel close again. And you're able to just kind of be present with that and sit with her and just be able to say, that actually makes sense. I have been working a lot lately. You don't have anything to defend. She's not necessarily attacking. I have been working a lot lately, and it would be nice to block some time off together. And I want to feel close too. So that makes sense, right? And then when you're able to say, tell me more, and that makes sense, and then you're able to hear these 3 words in the phrase that she brings to you, and she's able to say, yeah, that's right, okay? Then we're at winner, winner, chicken dinner, okay? I mean, that's it. That's you being vulnerable enough to enter into her world and to understand her and to regulate your own emotions in that process. And those lines communicate things like, I'm listening to you. I'm not threatened. I'm here with you. I want some of the same things that you're wanting. And that's kind of the vulnerable part. Now, a little bit more on the regulated part. Let me kind of let you in kind of on this deep psychological secret, okay? Are you ready for this? There's no such thing as a temper, right? There's no such thing as a temper. That's actually a cop-out. So when we feel intense emotion and we don't know what to do with it, we feel threatened. And when we feel threatened, it's easy to engage this delivery system that we have and to respond with anger, okay? So for example, if you walk up on a dog that you don't know, it's not your dog. You walk up on this dog, it's not known to you. And you come up on this dog and kind of start coming up on its space. What does that dog do? Okay, that dog begins to show his teeth, may growl at you, may bark at you, may even bite you if you get too close, okay? Now, is that dog angry with you? No, not necessarily. That's probably not the driving emotion behind the dog's behavior, okay? But what happens when we feel an intense emotion, especially as guys, we get threatened, okay? And when we get threatened, we want to create space. So sometimes when we do that, we get defensive or we get aggressive, okay? And sometimes what's needed is for us to pause and kind of give that a beat and recognize that initial response to just lash out so that we create space and we don't feel threatened anymore. But then ask ourselves the question, what is the deeper emotion that's going on underneath me that might be a little bit more vulnerable? Anger is kind of the check engine light, and it's telling you that there's something deeper that's going on the inside of you. Usually something that's much more vulnerable, something that may even be tender, right? So things like fear, hurt, shame, sadness, maybe even a longing. And we think we're acting all strong when we blow up, but it's actually exposing our weakness, right? Strength is not suppressing it or pushing it down. Strength is slowing it down. Strength is finding the stuff that's underneath and naming it and kind of reframing it in light of truth, and then being able to re-engage her. So volume isn't power, and shutting down isn't strength, but containment is. And honesty is strength. It's a powerful thing that we can do in our relationships because it promotes connection when we do that. But when we get aggressive, it pushes connection further away. So that is kind of what regulated vulnerability is. All right. The fourth habit of highly effective husbands: initiate quality time with her. Okay. Pursue her. Right. I deal so much with couples who are in trouble, and I spend a lot of time, teaching them to listen to one another and to speak to one another lovingly. But the hidden train derailment is the failure to pursue time with her. Now, let me just tell you this. If you don't pursue your wife, something else will. Okay? It may not be a person, and I'm not necessarily implying that she's going to go out and have an affair, but it may not be a person, but there'll be some kind of distraction that will. Okay? Her phone will meet that need. Okay? Kids will pursue her. Friends will pursue her. Workouts will meet that need. Her job, extended family, church, okay? All of those things. In the end, right? Those are all the things that will pursue her and may consume her. Okay? But here's the thing to know. There's nothing inherently wrong with any of those things unless they replace the pursuit that only you can offer, right? Most of those things, if those are the things that wind up consuming her, they become junk food for her, okay? And as they become junk food, and that's what's kind of consuming her over time, resentment will be something that sets in, okay? Emotional distance will grow. So stop being vague, hoping that somehow a connection is just going to happen organically, and get concrete. Well, let me kind of tell you how to get concrete. You need a mini date every week, okay? I mean, an hour or two of you guys just hanging out, getting food. If you want to, you don't have to get food, get coffee. You don't have to get anything. Just hang out and do something together, okay? Go for a walk. I mean, sit on the back porch. I mean, whatever you do, be intentional about it. Ask her for that date. Have her agree to it and spend that time with her. And then at least every month, maybe more often, have a real date. I mean, 3 to 4 hours. I mean, where you go out to dinner and a movie, or you go out to a show, or you go out to do something. Go axe throwing. I don't care what you do. Something that it's blocking off and it's sending her the message: you really matter to me, okay? And I delight in your company, and I want that more than I want my phone, more than I want a game, more than I want anything else. I want to hang out with you because I enjoyed being with you. That's why we got married. And then about once a quarter, you need an overnight, okay? Go somewhere, get a hotel, camp out in a tent. I don't care what you do, okay? But whatever it is that communicates to her, you're worth blocking this time off for, right? So, and this is not necessarily guaranteeing romance, and it's certainly not guaranteeing sex, okay? But this is something that can be romantic, and it can lead to the kind of connection that's celebrated with physical intimacy too, right? But at the end of the day, this is just kind of bare minimum stuff. This is maintenance, all right? And by that, I don't mean that it's this cold, calculated list of boxes to check, but it's something that's intentional, and it's something that's necessary, all right? So you're intentional about a lot of things. You're intentional about workouts. You make sure you get 3 or 4 in every week. You're intentional about other meetings that you go to. So you schedule the things that matters, ranging from duck hunting to golf, to parents, to intervals of checking your smoker when a brisket's on, to watching a game or ordering your favorite flavor wings. I mean, we're intentional about all those things. So if your marriage only gets leftovers, don't be surprised when it starts acting like it. And when it starts acting like that stale hamburger that's been in the refrigerator for 2 weeks, okay? Don't be surprised when she starts acting like it, okay? All right, number 5. Lead her spiritually. And I mean, lead her spiritually with an informed opinion, okay? Spiritual leadership isn't necessarily preaching. I'm not saying go, do a Bible study and tell her all the things that you learn from it and what to do, okay? And leading her spiritually is not about correcting theology from the couch, okay? But it's paying attention. It's caring for all of her. The word psyche, I don't know if you realize this or not, but the word psyche is really another word for soul. So you're offering her soul care. I did a Bible study this morning. I taught a Bible study this morning from Genesis 25. In it, Isaac and Rebekah went 20 years, okay, without having a baby. Right? And she was a part of the promise. Isaac was a part of the promise. But the Bible tells us that he prayed for her for 20 years. And God, in that period of time, formed things in the two of them that couldn't have been formed if they hadn't been praying for this, hadn't been connecting with God over this issue they were longing for. But he knew what to pray for her, and he prayed for her, and after 20 years, she had a baby. Now, you may just ask your wife, how can I pray for you? Now, if you want to get really crazy, pray for her right then. Pray out loud for her, with her, over her. And is that weird for you? Does that sound weird? Well, join the crowd. Suck it up and do it anyway, okay? No, you don't have to have fancy words. I mean, heck, even if you just start out just kind of holding her hand and praying silently for her, or writing out a prayer for her and maybe showing that to her, giving that to her as a love note, start there. You don't need eloquence. You don't need presence. You don't have to use all the these and thous and, like a public prayer in church. It doesn't. Just talk to God, all right? Just talk to God. Ask God to help her. Ask God to do the things in her that she's named for you. And then maybe have an opinion, a spiritual opinion, and make sure that it's informed. Get caught learning Scripture, reading Scripture, memorizing Scripture, listening to sermons, listening to podcasts. Then maybe you guys have some conversation about some things that you're learning together. So leadership flows from engagement that you have first with God and then with her, but it's not control. It's not bossing her around and say, the Bible tells me I'm the head of the household. No, it's leading as a servant and leading from example. All right, number 6 is sacrifice regularly, okay? And honestly, sacrifice regularly. This is another habit of highly effective husbands. Now, when you think about sacrificing, let me just tell you this, your job doesn't count, okay? Providing doesn't count. Doing the things that come most naturally doesn't count, sorry. Sacrifice means you give up something that you want, okay? Maybe your hobbies, maybe your comfort, maybe your preferences. Here's something I know. If it costs you nothing, it's not really sacrifice, okay? The saddest comment I think that I ever heard is say, I know my wife really longs for this, but that's just not something that I do. That doesn't come naturally for me. And I hear women say this all the time. If he would only talk to me, if he would only listen to me, if he'd only be patient with me, if he would only show an interest in my work, if he would only show an interest in my day and in the kids, if he would only lead out with finances. And our response is, well, that's just not something that I do naturally, right? But see, doing these things is what makes it an act of love. When we do it anyway, that's how we demonstrate our love for her, because it doesn't come naturally for us, okay? This is how trust is rebuilt. It's not with grand gestures, but it's just with consistent, costly choices sometimes. John Eldredge, I've loved John Eldredge, kind of grown up in my adult life with him. And in the book Wild at Heart, he talks about that as guys, we want to be kind of seen as the knight in shining armor. We want to, climb the staircase, cross the moat, slay the dragon, and rescue the damsel. That's the way that we see our marriages working out. That's who we want to be, right? And he talks about this, and he talks about what the biggest problem that guys often have in their marriages. And he talks about his marriage, and he said this was a moment that he realized this, and I love this, is we think about this knight in shining armor kind of metaphor. He said this in the book. He said, "My wife adored me. What else could I want? What more could I want? But I, like many men, when asked to really show up for her, hesitated. I wanted to be the knight, but I didn't want to bleed like a knight. And somewhere along the way, I had forgotten the true joy that only comes when I spill my life out for another," right? Your genuine sacrifice may be the most romantic, connecting thing that you ever do. And you wouldn't necessarily think that, instead of going to play golf today, I go and fill her tank up with gas and take her out to eat a taco. But when that's a sacrifice and she's aware of that, she may look at you and say, I've never felt more loved than I do in this moment, right? But what we often do is we hesitate. So don't hesitate, guys. Okay, sacrifice for her. Okay, finally, number 7. Okay, and this one is kind of non-negotiable, but something for us to realize, and that is this: if she's the only problem, there is no solution. Okay, so when it comes to conflict, if your entire story is that she needs to change, then you're stuck before you get out of the gate. Okay, because the only one thing that you can control is you. Now, that doesn't mean that you're the villain. It doesn't mean that she's perfect or that she doesn't contribute to the challenges in the marriage. I'm sure she does, because she's human too, right? But what it does mean is that you're responsible for your percentage, your tone, okay, your timing, your defensiveness, your intensity, your avoidance. Okay, what we have to do as guys on a regular basis is we got to be willing to just look in the stinking mirror, okay? And we've got to cut the excuses. I've got a good friend of mine that used to say this, and I can just see him saying this. He's a big old guy, about 6'5", 300-pound fella. I mean, and he got a big, booming, deep voice. And he would kind of look at you and bug his eyes out a little bit. He'd say, "Your excuses only sound good to you," right? So, and that's the truth. Your excuses only sound good to you. So change the percentage of your behavior that's unhealthy and contributing to the problem. So regardless of what she does differently, okay, you're responsible for you. So what are you going to read? What are you going to listen to? Who are you going to talk to? How are you going to pray? How are you going to connect with other guys in a way that brings some repair to the things that are going wrong from your side of the fence, right? That's not weakness, that's agency. That's you living out your life in a way that's consistent with what you say that you believe and who it is that you want to be, depending on no one else, not even her, to drive your choice to do that. No. Marriage doesn't require brilliance, okay? And it's not this flurry of activity all of a sudden, but what works here is steadiness, okay? Presence is something that beats perfection, and regulation beats intensity, and pursuit beats passivity, all right? These aren't complicated, they're just rare, okay? And men who practice them don't just improve their marriages, they become men that other people trust. They become men that other people feel safe with. They become men that other people respect. And that's kind of what Fieldcraft is. And your craft as a husband rises to the level of your training and the way that you practice it. And it doesn't happen just because you want it to. It comes because you know what to do and you practice doing that. So if this hits close to home, don't overthink it, okay? Just pick one thing. Out of these 7, pick one thing and practice it this week, okay? Not perfectly, but steadily. And then the next week, add something to it. And if you want a deeper framework for all of this, for emotions, for purpose, for leadership, for how you live under pressure, then that's kind of what Fieldcraft is about, okay? It's not self-improvement. It's just a steadier way to live in the life that you already have. You don't become a new person, you just become a better version of you, okay? The guy that you say that you want to be that guy, okay? Now, there's a link in the notes below for more on Fieldcraft if you want that. There's another link about Marriage 101. It's just a 5 chapter kind of video series on that. And if you know that you're reactive because you got a past and there's reactions that you bring sometimes that you don't really understand where they came from or why you act the way that you do. There's another course that's called 5 Keys to Healing from Trauma in the notes below, and you can check that one out too. Okay, or you just kind of start right here. Just show up. Just stay present and don't run when it gets hard. And that alone, guys, it changes more than you can even think. All right. So thanks so much for checking this out. And if you want more, check out the notes below. So I wish you well. God's blessings on